This is Philly Drone Tech with Tom Brunt. Thank you to our sponsors, Wistia.com, Zoho Mail, and GetFlywheel.com.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Philly Drone Tech here on the phillytech.org Netcast Network. I'm Tom Brunt. Well, I'm back from my in-between stints on the road, and unlike last episode where I didn't have a whole lot to report about, this time is kind of feature-filled. So I've got a lot to talk about for this one. So let's get started. First, on a bit of a personal note, my beloved Cheerson CX-10, the what's been dubbed the world's smallest quadcopter, well, it's seen better days. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I spent a little too much time having it crash into things. And well, long story short, one of the little micro motors bound, so I can't use it anymore. So, well, what I ended up doing, it's only $22 on eBay, so I bought a new one. The new one is they've upgraded the model, so for the same price as the old one, it's now the Cheerson CX-10A. Now here it is, and they've got it in like a bunch of cool new colors, more kind of like space age kind of colors. This is more like a silver. They also have like a gold one and a white one. So it has the same controller as before, but what's really cool, a feature they've added to this one is it has headless mode, and it works absolutely incredible. Headless mode is, as I've reported before, is the ability to, regardless of which way you have the nose of the craft pointing, it will still respond to the controls as if you're moving forward, backward, left, right, no matter which way it's actually the nose is facing. This makes them so incredibly easy to fly, and I mean, you can do kind of twirls as it's flying around, and as if I haven't been amazed enough at the level of technology involved in something with that small, they've gone ahead and surpassed it. So, well, me being an engineer, I'm going to do what, of course, any engineer is not going to be able to resist to do. I'm going to, of course, use the opportunity to take the old one apart and see how it works. So, I did that, and I have a couple photos to show you, but first, here he is here. Here's the old Tiny Tim. He served me well. And then when I open it up here, here's a little extremely mini circuit board there. I mean, it's amazing that this has to have control for the motors, ESCs, electronic servo control. The micro little motors themselves, you can see in the picture how small these things are, these little motors, and how fast they must be able to respond in order to fly as well as it does. Plus, it's got to have a radio receiver built in too, 2.4 gigahertz, and it also has stabilization as well. So it's got that, and then on another picture there, you can kind of see that it's got the little tiny battery. So it wasn't all for naught. I got to, I can't resist doing. I've got to see how it works. So there we go. So I plan to have fun with the new Cheerson, and I recommend it even more now that it has the headless mode. It's just absolutely amazing. It's just a blast to fly, and you can take the thing anywhere. Okay, well, let's go with the next story. As I always talk about what's new with the FAA. I only have one story this particular episode, and well, what the news is, as I reported last week about the Congress is working on the Commercial UAS Modernization Act. Well, the FAA is starting to respond. They're getting the hint that they need to move things along. So what they've done is they are appointing a senior UAS advisor to coordinate relations with the industry and outside stakeholders. The position was created to deal with what the FAA has been calling the absolute crush of outside interest from the private sector, plus the pressure from Congress. So this person will oversee with the industry as far as come up with a drone regulation and drone integration as a way to more quickly adapt commercial commercial UAS use into our airspace in a much quicker way. Let's see, it's the new senior UAS advisor will report to the FAA Deputy Administrator, Michael Whitaker, and have broad scope to deal with the public, the aviation industry, state and local governments, members of Congress, and others. So this is another good sign. They have, as of yet, they haven't filled this position yet, but again, this is very similar to what the Commercial UAS Modernization Act is proposing to do. So it looks like the FAA is already getting ahead of that and kind of fulfilling that requirement to get ready for it, which is very good news. So my next story, that it comes home to me being working in broadcasting. I was very glad to see this. I reported before that ESPN had used drones to cover their Winter X Games in Colorado this past year. Well, Fox Sports is now getting into the UAV coverage for the U.S. Open golf coverage, which will be between June 15th and 21st, which is the time that you're probably seeing this podcast. They have hired an outfit called Hella Video Productions out of Austin, Texas. They're FAA approved, and they will be providing aerial coverage of holes 16, 17, and 18 with 4K cameras mounted on looks like hexacopters, six propellers or more. The drones have been previously tested at the last 3 golf majors, plus a Supercross event at the indoor Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. But this will be the first time for Fox to do absolute live coverage right from the drones. As I mentioned, that ESPN used it first very successfully, I might add, in the coverage of their X Games, and now it's going to start to happen fast and furious now, folks. Now, as the FAA allows more companies to allow use of it, and as they start tweaking the rules for where you can and cannot fly and provide coverage, you're going to start to see this more in a lot of large-scale events. In fact, I'm going to go out of my way and predict it now that you will probably see one at this year's upcoming Super Bowl. Somehow they'll find a way to use it. I mean, that's still quite a ways away, but that's enough time for somebody to figure out to use drones for that. And in fact, for the Super Bowl, speaking of which, my next story, after I take a little sponsor break here, is there's a NFL team that's actually going to be using drones in practice. So I'm going to take the quick sponsor break first, and then I'll come back and tell you some more stories, including that one. So talk to you in a minute. Today's show is sponsored by Wistia. Wistia is a video hosting and analytics platform that helps businesses get the most out of online video. We use Wistia here at PhillyTech.org. Flywheel, a managed WordPress hosting platform built specifically for designers and creative agencies, and helps thousands of designers across the world launch projects every day. And by Soho Mail, professional, low-cost email with business-class features and security. Okay, welcome back. Well, as I alluded to before the break, my next story has to do with drones in the NFL. And I know this is a Philly-based podcast, and it pains me that absolutely pains me that I have to talk about this team in a positive light. And you'll know why when I say who it is. You've probably guessed it already. Yes, it's the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are going to be the first NFL team that I've read about anyway that are going to be using drones in practice sessions this year. Head coach Jason Garrett was inspired by SMU coach David Mars, who has already been using drones in their practice. What they're going to be using them for is what's called the all-22 angle. In broadcasting and in football, the all-22 is the really wide camera at the top of the stadium to show the entire field of play, all 11 players for the offense, 11 players for the defense, the all-22. This camera is usually up kind of pretty high, and as the field of play widens, it usually gets wider and wider, and it's at like an extreme angle. So the drones will allow them to get better coverage get more of a closer angle to be able to see, where get a little closer. You can coach better. You can see hand placement. You can see where they have their feet, where they have their eyes, and it's going to give them a new perspective that they haven't had before. So look for other teams using that. If not this year, then in the years coming up. So I hate to say it, kudos to the Cowboys for that one. So there's that story. My next story that I'm going to have to talk about, you've probably seen or heard of this one because it went pretty viral. Firefighters in an attempt to shoot down the DJI Phantom. An amateur drone pilot, John Thompson, flew his drone over a fire in upstate New York. He's getting shots of the fire, which, looking at it, I mean, it's just your typical drone footage. But at about the 12-minute mark, you see that the firefighters really aren't none too pleased about it, and they start to take shots at it with their fire hose. Smartly, as I'm watching the footage, it looks like that the drone pilot got the message, and he moved it out of the way quickly and landed it. He is now he's claiming that the drone is he's out $2,200. That's a little expensive for a Phantom 2, and however, I'm not sure if it's even out of commission because you can clearly see that he lands the drone. But anyway, this brings up a lot of points. Now, it brought up a lot of comments for and against. So a lot of people, of course, don't like drones, so they feel he was well deserved of it. A lot of people say it's a violation of privacy. I don't know how covering what's a newsworthy event is a violation of privacy. To say that, you can't show my house on fire. Well, a news station can. So really, what's the point? The other thing that it brings up is I think it's extremely irresponsible of the fire department doing what they were doing, because you can clearly see there that they still needed to work on putting that fire out. I really don't think focusing the water over to the drone flying overhead is really going to help the situation. And for those that talk about, safety of the firefighters by having a drone flying overhead, knocking one out of the sky and have it come pummeling to the earth is not very safe minded. Unfortunately, we're kind of at this level right now where you read stories all the time about people taking ammunition and guns and rifles and trying to shoot drones out of the sky that they see flying overhead. We seem to be at a culture right now that a lot of people see any drone flying in the air as illegal, which of course is not the case. But a lot of people feel emboldened to kind of take the law in their own hands because they feel it's illegal anyway. And really what it is it's illegal to shoot stuff down out of the sky and destroy other people's property. So that stuff's going to need to be worked out. But this is the most highest profile case that I've seen of somebody or a group trying to actually swat a drone out of the sky. I think what you're going to be seeing in the probably not too distant future is that this is how you're going to see coverage of fires on TV, folks. It's going to be by a drone, not so much by a helicopter. So I don't approve of the fire company at all. I think it was extremely reckless of them to do. If you talk about the guy being reckless, the worst that's going to happen is the drone's going to come down on top of a burning fire. But they basically were trying to shoot it out of the sky for it to fall on other people that were around the fire. So I'll leave links up to this, and maybe we can follow along and see what happens. There's no word yet on whether he's being charged, although they're looking into charges, whether it was reckless, invasion of privacy. I don't think that's going to work, but maybe recklessness. And the FAA needs to weigh in on it too, because where he takes the drone off, it seems clear that he doesn't have line of sight. However, he's shooting it as a hobbyist, which, as we know, the laws are a lot less committed to hobbyists' action. So we'll see what they have to say about it. Okay, my My next story here is another one that went viral that you may have heard of. Enrique Iglesias is doing a concert in Tijuana. And they use, for that concert, they use the DJI Inspire, and they fly it around the crowd and, you know, take images for the Jumbotron, and it's part of his show. So what he often does with the drone, and you see in the footage here, he grabs it in air and then spins it around on himself to kind of get a drone selfie of himself and the audience in the background. A little bit of a mishap, and he ended up getting his hand caught by the propellers. And you can kind of see here, it's a little bit, he got sliced up pretty good. You can see the blood on his hand there. They wanted him to stop the show, but he kept going. Good for him. He kept, show must go on. So he kept doing the show, and then he got treated for lacerations of the hand after the show was over. It's interesting that, of course, this was all done, this is all done, by himself. I mean, he purposely went out to grab the drone. I don't know if DJI Inspire is the best drone to do this with. Here's a picture of it flying in the air. As you can see, it's the idea of it is its landing gear fold out of the way to get an unobstructed shot from the camera, which is great for what they were using it for, but not so great if part of your act is to grab it and hold it in place. So I don't know if he'll adjust his act now, but I'm wondering if it's now for us drone users, if it's going to inspire a new term saying basically if you get your hands caught in the way of the props that you did in Enrique. My last story for this episode is it's a pretty fun one. It's a good one. You've all probably heard and have seen parody movie trailers that are all over the place online. They're not actual movies. They're not going to be actual movies, but they are just merely the commercial for what could be a really wild movie, done so well that you're convinced that the movie does exist, when in fact it does not. Well, a director named Jordan Rubin, who also is behind a very campy horror movie called Zombievers, which is out on DVD and Netflix right now, came up with this parody trailer for a horror drone themed movie, and it's absolutely hysterical. Here it shows a DJI Phantom basically having a mind of its own and going crazy, killing and tormenting people in the theme of very similar to many horror films. There's a scene here of it like sitting in the rocking chair is just absolutely hysterical, and here's a little bit of it here. After seeing this trailer, I don't know about you folks, but I really wish that this was going to be a full-blown movie. It's a good thing that that's only complete fantasy, and there's no way it's drones an inanimate object. It can't come to life like that at will, can it? Okay, folks, so that's all I have for this episode. As always, you can contact me. You've been seeing my email and my Twitter account at Drone Guy Tom. You've been seeing that on the screen throughout the show. And I'd love to hear from you with comments or anything at all that I can cover on upcoming episodes. And as always, all the info that I talked about on here, here's a link to my Medium account, medium.com/@DroneGuyTom. And here I will provide all the links for everything I talk about so you can see it and research it yourself very easily. I do that for all my shows. And one more thing is I always kind of do the little PBS fundraiser thing. We're a member of the Patreon network. And, we could, this is a new network. And if you like the shows that you see here on the PhillyTech.org site, we can use your help. anything you can give to help us keep the server fans buzzing, as I like to say. So if you can, thank you very much. And well, that's all I have for this show. I'm glad I had a lot of good features to tell you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.